Hi besties. It's been a long time. I want to talk about some books. Let's wrap up the year. I don't think I've talked about books I've read since like August. So this is gonna be the 17 books I read in the second half of the year, except I'm not going to talk about all of them because that's way too many. I'm just going to talk about the ones that I have something to say, and then I'll like briefly mention the other ones that I read. But I didn't read that much in the second half of the year, all things considered. Like 17 books is a lot, but the first half of the year I read like 40. So I was slacking, life got in the way, you know how it is. But some of these were some of my favourite reads of the year. So let's start, shall we? With Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This is a book I knew I was gonna love. This is a young adult kind of horror fantasy, but it's not like scary horror. It's like spooky, whimsical, atmospheric, like eerie horror, like haunted mansion horror, which is my niche. This book just worked so well. The writing is beautiful. The vocabulary is like potent. Like this book truly feels like creaky floorboards, like a dusty attic, like skeleton in the closet type shit. That's not what I meant to say, but we'll go with it. If you like things like Coraline, or I always think of the game Franbo. When I was reading this, I just kept thinking about that game because it felt so similar. Like it's very like kind of childlike whimsy, but like scary. It really did feel quite adventurous in all of its like kind of melancholic atmosphere. I'll read like the little review on the back because I kind of love it. It says, a haunting and beautifully tilled garden of darkness. Gallant unearthed the shadows, webs of family history, the price of deadly bargains, and the secrets we guard. Real. It was just enchanting, spooky, fun time. I think if you're into that kind of niche, this just does the job so well. Like the writing is so good that I feel like you can't really go wrong. Like it's either gonna work for you or it's not, but if you think it might work for you, give it a shot. Next up we have Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. This book almost made me have a mental snap. I decided to try and read this basically all in one night, and then I realised at like 3 in the morning that I was literally like going to have a breakdown because this is such a beautiful and painfully accurate depiction of mental illness and just kind of the feeling of like seeping away from sanity, like kind of like slowly going into a deep dark depressive episode that is just irrational, full of anxiety, paranoia, and you just kind of lose yourself. So that was not good to read in one night. I feel like I don't really remember much about it. Like I feel like this was a bit of a fever dream because I did like read it very quickly. But I know that the character felt like a piece of me. Like I was like, I know this character like the back of my hand. It was funny as well. It was very like charismatic and witty. It's about Gilda. It says, a 20-something atheist animal-loving lesbian who cannot stop ruminating about death. And she ends up accidentally working in a Catholic church, which is a witty little scenario that then somehow gets very fucking depressing and dark. I definitely don't recommend reading this if you're in like a bad place, but if you're not and you can handle it, you may connect deeply to the themes, to the character. It was really well written. It was just very, very good, but I wouldn't return to it anytime soon. Thank you, Emily Austen. Next up, the Cruel Prince series. This is my first proper fantasy series. It's also my first time reading fae, and any sort of kind of like, I don't want to say like enemies to lovers, shall we say like bully victim to lovers, kind of Emily, rival, whatever. Loved all of it. Loved it all. I didn't know because this is kind of a like book talk favourite, if you will. I didn't know if the writing was gonna be good because those are kind of hit or miss, but the writing was so good. Like I knew I would love fae, but like I did even more than I thought I would. The politics was really well written. I didn't know if I was going to get into the politics. These are in the wrong order. That's kind of annoying. There we go. The second book is very politics heavy and it took me like a while to get into it, but by the third book I was just like immersed in the world. I knew everything that was going on. I cared about the characters, the drama of it all. The stakes were high. Cardan. I can't actually think about it. I did do a full reading vlog for this on TikTok, so like I'm sure you can find that if you'd be interested, because it was a ride. There was a lot of emoting. Yeah, it was just really fun. It was really fun. Next up, Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Tsushimura. This is a kind of, I would honestly say like middle grade / young adult fantasy about a group of children who don't go to school because they're depressed or they get bullied, something of the sort, and they all get transported to this world through their mirror that is just a big castle, and they get told that it's kind of like a game where you each have to find the key, and whoever finds the key gets like one wish granted. There's a lot of other rules and stuff like that, but every day they go into their mirror when they're meant to be at school and go to this castle, which is a very whimsical little plot, especially for me as someone who was too depressed to go to school a lot of the time, so usually stories about that I connect to. This just kind of didn't leave as big of an impact on me as I wanted it to, but it was really heartfelt, really atmospheric, really it was very whimsical. I keep saying whimsical, that's just the word of the fucking day. I think one of the issues that I had with it wasn't really an issue, but I wanted it to be more of a quest. Like when I found out it was kind of like a game, that excited me deeply, because I love a kind of like quest format for a book, and it wasn't very questy. I feel like most of the looking for the key happened like very near the end, and it was very fast. It was more just like about the kids and their own like kind of interpersonal relationships and lives, which is still fun, but it did just feel like it wasn't like smacking me in the face with like, I love this, I'm having such a good time. It was just a good execution of a good concept, but I don't like think about it that much anymore, so that's the reason why it's not like a favorite. Okay, one that I don't own because my friend lent it to me is Bluets by Maggie Nelson. I read this last week. It is a kind of poetry, memoir, essays, like mashup. It's written in these kind of stanzas. I'll put a full here. Very fast paced, very short. It's about kind of love and heartache and trying to figure out the world, being in your 20s, about writing, about how we deal with pain. But at the baseline is Maggie Nelson's love letter to the colour blue. It is about how blue integrates into all of these things and how we perceive blue as a society and how it kind of interacts with history. It was so good. Oh my god, this came into my life at the exact moment I needed it. I have been going through a kind of heartbreak, confusion in my 20s, life is just starting to kind of unravel itself situation, and I read this and it was just like everything I needed it to be. Like it was what I needed to hear, what I needed kind of reaffirmed for me, what I was thinking about. The writing is so lyrical, so beautiful. It is very intimate. It's about a lot about sex and, as I said, like love, heartbreak, but it feels truly like it's coming from her soul, and it interacts with yours and your relationship to these very intimate things. It was so cathartic. It was healing. It was healing. If you are in a very like transitional period of your life or going through heartbreak especially, I absolutely recommend this. Maggie Nelson, you have a way with words, and this just really stuck in my heart and my brain, and I'm very grateful that I read it at the time that I did. Sometimes things just come when you need them. Another one that I don't own but I will be buying because I listened to this on audiobook is The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green. This is his collection of essays where he rates things in the Anthropocene, like completely random things from human existence, on a scale of 1 to 5, and it was life affirming. Yes, he's rating completely random things, but it's mostly just a reflection on mental health, on humanity, on the universe, on how we understand things, on history, on the current political climate, on the state of the world during COVID. I just really enjoyed it. I had a very good time with it. I would love to reread it again. I want to buy it. If that sounds like something to be up your street, again, I recommend. I think it's just a really good execution of that kind of pondering reflection, if you will. Next up we have the last book I read this year, the most recent book, which is The Enchanted Sonata. This is a retelling of the Nutcracker and also kind of like the Pied Piper and mixed in. I've been wanting to read this for a couple years. I saw my favourite booktuber Emmy talk about this like 2 years ago as like a whimsical, wintry, magical book, and it was exactly that, and I finally got to read it this winter. The magic system is based in music, which, as someone who both loves and plays music, oh my god, I had such a good time with that, and it was it was kind of like a love letter to stories and music, and I definitely recommend it. It didn't like change my life, but it was very fun, good pacing, good action, good heartfelt stuff. Some of it was like a little bit like, I guess like juvenile or like silly, but I don't really care. When you get in that headspace, you're just enjoying it. It's just fun. I recommend. The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I finally read this for the first time in my goddamn life, and I'm actually kind of glad that I waited to read this as an adult, because it felt like such a like nostalgic look back on being in high school as someone with like depression and someone who was very, very like annoyingly introspective and trying to understand people and love and connections to others and how important those connections are, and friendship and everything in between. I just felt like a piece of myself was in this. Charlie, I love you. Definitely heart-wrenching, made me cry multiple times, quite dark if you will, but it also felt full of so much kind of optimism at times, even though it was like quite cynical and depressing. Charlie has just such like a loving perspective on life and his friends and the world around him sometimes. It was beautiful, and as I said, I just connected deeply to it. Speaking of school settings, but in a completely different way, If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I was told by multiple of my best friends that this was like a 5-star book, and I didn't think it was bad at all. But this is a dark academia about a group of very pretentious Shakespeare students who are very unlikable, very unreliable, very dramatic, very at odds with everything and everyone. But they also do kind of love each other, and they do have these strange interpersonal relationships, and there is a lot of like humanity in this, but it felt to me like the characters were kind of unrealistic, and I know that's kind of the point. Like, they're very dramatic, it's very, as I said, like Shakespearean, but I was a little bit like, I cannot take this seriously. If you're not into Shakespeare, be wary. You will have to read a lot of Shakespeare in this, but it does create some good tension. It does create some very good like scenes where like not a lot is happening, but a lot is being said between the lines, which I do appreciate, and the writing was good. I did enjoy a lot of the characters. One of them was like weirdly written like so misogynistically, but it is written by a woman, which was confusing. The ending kind of pissed me off. I did cry, but it pissed me off. Again, it's dark, gritty, and very just so melodramatic. If you're in for melodrama, oh my god. And lastly, for the books that I kind of like have something to say about, The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I read this recently. This is a cozy middle grade fantasy about a girl who gets dropped off in the woods in a kind of sacrificial ritual and adopted by a witch, a tiny little dragon, and a swamp monster who also like writes poetry. This kind of reminded me of a mix of Legends and Lattes and Six Crimson Cranes. Higher stakes in Legends and Lattes, similar kind of adventure to Six Crimson Cranes, but the same like coziness, like found family, like you love the characters, very warm feeling as Legends and Lattes, which is just ideal. It's got magic, it's got murder attempts, it's got characters that make you want to cry because you just love them and they're so kind and heartfelt. The writing was genuinely so much better than I was expecting. Like, it was beautiful. I had multiple times where I was like crying because something that was said just like hit me in the soul. This was just such an appreciation of love and finding family and friendship and community and the magic of it all, and as you can tell, it's just a warm book. There, as I said, there's some high stakes, there's some talk of murder, but very cozy, very witchy. Loved it. I loved it. And then these are just some of the books that I will mention that I read, but like I don't really have much to say. Starting with I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I just bought this physical copy the other day. I listened to this on audiobook and I absolutely recommend. I feel like I just don't have much to say because everyone said it already. If you don't know, it's about Jeanette McCurdy's childhood, about growing up on Nickelodeon. Specifically, it's about her relationship with her mother. It is harrowing, it is very dark, it is full of wit and humour though. Yeah, I was surprised by how well written this was. I recommend, but like I don't have much else to say. It was just good. I also read Hide by Kirsten White. I got given this review copy by the publisher, thank you so much. But it just wasn't that good. I loved the like idea of it all. It's a horror set in like a theme park, where it's like kind of like a hide and seek game in a theme park, very like Squid Games. The execution was just kind of poor. It just like the writing wasn't great, the story generally just wasn't great, the pacing was bad, and I haven't thought about it again. But I read it. The Girl from the Sea. This is just such a cute sapphic graphic novel. The artwork is absolutely, oh, whoops. I feel like generally with graphic novels, like because of the format, not a lot happens. It's just like a cute little story. I kind of wanted to just sit and stare at the artwork the whole time to really like give it the appreciation it deserves. But yeah, I recommend if you like graphic novels and gay people. Another book I read recently, The Disaster Tourist by Young Ko-yoon. This I just hoped would be a little bit more of a nuanced commentary, or just give you a little bit more to like sit and ruminate on and think about. This is about a woman who works for a company who basically design like holiday tours to disaster locations. So like where an earthquake has happened or like a massacre or something horribly immoral, which is why I kind of expected more of like, yeah, just something kind of more written between the lines, stuff for you to kind of think about. But everything it was trying to say, it just said it. There was no showing. It was very telling. I don't know. It was just a little bit disappointing. I still thought it was good. I don't know particularly if this is worth your time as like a commentary though, or speculative fiction. It was fine. And lastly, I read Take a Hint, Dani Brown, the second book in the Brown Sisters trilogy. I loved Get a Life, Chloe Brown so much that I'm surprised it took me this long to read this, but it was good. I don't have much to say. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as the first one. I loved the characters though. Zaf, I think about you all the time. It was just fun. Talia Hibbert's just a really good romance author. It didn't like stick out to me too much. Haven't really thought about it since, but it was a fun time. If you're into romance or Talia Hibbert, I recommend this trilogy. And that's it. Those are the books I read in the second half of the year, which feels like less than I would have thought. I'm very excited about all the books I'm going to read next year. I have a strong TBR. I need to read the books that I've owned for like 2 years and haven't read yet. So we'll see how that goes. I still want to continue to do these videos because I love talking about books that I read and having a little void to speak to, so I'm probably going to keep doing them. I also want to film a book haul soon, so that'll be fun. But I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you've had a good year. It's been a goddamn messy one. Hope you've read some good stuff. Hope you read some good stuff in the next year. Incredible. God, this took me so fucking long to do for what?